Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Chris Burres. He is the founder and chief scientist of MyVitalC, where he manufactured a Nobel Prize winning molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result in history, a full 90% extension of life. Quite interesting. He's also a published author. He's the host of Uncovering the Secrets to Longevity Health Summit. He is a patent holder and master of comedy improv. He's pretty funny, actually. This is an interesting podcast. And he's at the intersection where science meets laughter, and his mission to help people live longer, healthier, happier, pain-free lives with science. Now, MyVitalC may sound like it is a vitamin C product, and I'm holding up one of his products right here because we are going to have a follow-up after I test out his products for a full, I think, 45 days. And I'll let you guys know, because he mentions that in 10 days, you will know if the MyVitalC works. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. It's not vitamin C. It sounds like it, but it's actually a carbon molecule known as ESS-60. And while you may have heard of it before, one of the things that Chris notes in the podcast, and he'll talk all about it, is that how it is extracted and stabilized, and in particular, whether it is put into olive oil or another type of oil, makes it all the difference in terms of how it works in your body. And so he's going to dive in with me. We're going to geek out. We're going to talk all about this carbon molecule. And what's interesting is, like, check this out. There's party recovery. So if you were going to drink, you can take it before and after drinking to help prevent a hangover. We've got a boost for focus and energy. We've got exercise recovery. And then we also have one for better sleep. And this is something that Chris has noted about the ESS-60, that it really, when taken during the day, actually can help people for sleep at night. And one more thing, they're working on a carbon 60 product that helps with the face and so skin there. So I'm going to spend 45 days working on taking these things, and I will give you a full report, and I'll have Chris back and we'll talk all about it. Because let's face it, there's a lot of products out there, and I really want to be at full integrity when I talk about a product and my experience with them. And so MyVitalC is not vitamin C, it's carbon 60, and it is meant to be much like an antioxidant. And Chris is going to explain a little bit more in the podcast. So let's introduce you to Chris Burres. Hey, health junkies. I have Chris Burres on today, and he's a scientist, he's an entrepreneur, and he's got expertise in carbon nanomaterials. He's the founder of MyVitalC, and as you can tell, he's got his scientist coat on there, so he is working it today. We've had some great laughs already. You guys are going to love this podcast. Chris, welcome to the Health Fix podcast.
Dr. J, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to dive into technology. Yes, I do actually have a lab, and I work in a lab. Sometimes people say, is that Dr. Chris? No, I don't want any, this is not intended to befuddle anyone. I just often come out of the lab and hop onto a podcast. So glad to be here, glad to be sharing some really cool technology with you and your audience.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, because as I said before we hit record, I'm like, okay, I've heard of carbon 60 technology. I have actually not tried it myself. Some patients have talked about it, but I don't think a lot of my group really is up to speed on it. So I am very excited to really dive into this, because a lot of people are going to be like, carbon, isn't that like what you get in ashes when you burn some stuff? We are made of carbon though, right?
Yeah. No, we're significant. We're called carbon beings for a reason, right? We're not silica beings, which is, I think, scientists theorize would be the other alternative if carbon wasn't available. And you mentioned soot. This is a great place to start. This molecule we're going to be talking about today is a naturally occurring molecule. If you collect the soot from a candle flame, right? And so typically you just put a cold steel plate over a candle flame. That dark soot has parts per million or parts per billion of what we call ESS-60 molecule. And I'll explain how we feel we're different than carbon 60 and why we really kind of came up with the moniker of ESS-60. But yeah, you can find this in parts per million, parts per billion in the soot of a candle.
Okay, so before we have people licking the soot, of candles and things of that. We better move into like, okay,
Wait. So you're appealing to junkies, health junkies, right? We've got another type of junkies, maybe with white powder all over their face. Now we've got this carbon powder all over our face. There's so many parallels going on here.
you know, and being a health junkie, and I think you could probably relate, we've tried some things, right? We've tried
Yeah.
things to see what happens with our body. We've tried different experiments, and you know, that's entirely why I say these things, because let's face it, we're all on our own journeys of figuring out what works for us. And you know, I'm not below licking certain things if it may be helpful for me in certain cases. Now, I know that's gonna, a lot of folks are gonna have some lots of things to think about what I just said. You guys can take it wherever you want.
That's their fault.
That
That's not our fault.
I'm
We
not.
didn't do that.
Not at all. So tell us a little bit about like how did we realize that like, okay, we have benefits with carbon? Like what was the idea in the first place where it was like you and also now I'm forgetting Dr. Fuller, if I remember there.
Well, it's Buckminster Fuller is the guy who brought the geodesic dome to prominence. So he didn't actually invent it; he brought it or patented.
Okay.
He brought it to prominence,
Okay.
and the whole collection of molecules we're about to talk about is named after Fuller, and they're called fullerenes. And carbon 60 is the most abundant. The next is carbon 70, and then 76, and on up, and kind of definitely even numbers, but varying. It's not every even number that the shape comes together, and the whole thing is serendipitous. Like the whole thing is serendipitous. How they ended up discovering it, how it ended up getting into the health space, and I'll start right there.
Yeah.
There was a scientist in the UK, Dr. Harold Kroto, who's an astrophysicist, right? So how many times does our conversation with health junkies start with an astrophysicist? He's looking out into space and he's seeing a spectra that he doesn't really understand what it is. And he has this suspicion that it's related to carbon. He knows this Dr. Smalley at Rice University here in Houston. That's where we're based. And he comes to Dr. Smalley has this really amazing piece of equipment. It's like the A2P something, right? It could have been R2D2, right? Basically this equipment will shine a laser at a sample, which will vaporize that sample. And then a puff of inert gas will take what was vaporized into a mass spectrometer and measure the weight of every single molecule that was created, right? So pretty heavy duty stuff, right? He comes over and he says, Dr. Smalley, I think the spectra out in space is carbon. I'd love for you to put carbon in your machine and try it. And Dr. Smalley was like, I'm not putting boring carbon in my machine. Like that's a boring molecule. I'm working with sexy things like titanium and exotic alloys. We're not putting boring carbon. So Harold Kroto goes away, kind of rebuked, comes back, asks Dr. Smalley again. Again, Dr. Smalley says, no, I'm not putting boring carbon in my machine. Again, Harold Kroto, who actually is now knighted. He was knighted because these three scientists, there's one other one I haven't mentioned yet, won the Nobel Prize. So it's Sir Harold Kroto, comes back, not Sir at the time, and he asks again, and yet again, Dr. Smalley says no. But one of Dr. Smalley's graduate students, a guy by the name of Heath, he says, listen, I'm coming over the weekend. I'll put your boring carbon in our machine, and I'll laser ablate it, and we'll look at it. And what they thought, because it's measuring the number of atoms in every molecule that's getting puffed into that mass spectrometer, they think they're looking, I'm sorry, I'm getting really sciencey here. I'll stop soon. They're thinking they're just making flat sheets of carbon, actually graphene. But there was a peak at 60 and also a little peak at 70. And he was able to tweak it, the settings of the machine, the pressures, and how quickly the gas pumped, and he was actually able to increase the peak at 60 and at 70. Now, if you think you're making just flat sheets of carbon, right, little pieces of graphene, why would there be a graphite sheet of 60 more prominent than a 59 or a 61? And there is no reason, right? If they're all flat sheets, they all have the kind of the same energy of formation. And so they start digging in, and ultimately they figure out that this molecule looks like this thing that I'm holding up. Now, if you're listening, don't worry, you don't have to find a screen, although you should check out this molecule. It's pretty beautiful. Imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule. It's a big molecule. This is my bigger one.
Yeah.
It's a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms in the shape of a geodesic dome, right? That's the dome that Buckminster Fuller brought to prominence. So the whole collection of molecules, carbon 60, carbon 70, 76 on up, are called fullerenes. And this one is really affectionately known as the buckyball after Buckminster Fullerene, and it's clearly a ball. So that's that first serendipitous part of this story. And then I'll turn it over to you in case you've got any questions about this. But the next part is like, what does it do? Why is it amazing? Why they won the Nobel Prize?
Yeah. Okay. So, couple things that are coming out because a lot of people are going to hear graphene and they're going to think graphene oxide. And they're going to be like, wasn't that the bad stuff that someone reported that was supposedly in some things?
Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Things.
pointy stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So just real quick, first off, there are no health detrimental impacts of graphene on its own. Graphene well documented at a minimum, at a worst case scenario, neutral, probably some beneficial aspects to it. It's when you put that oxide on it that you can start to have problems. Second, this is very different than a graphene, right? You can see the shape is actually of a sphere. I actually have a model over there, but I won't get it because it's just a flat sheet. You're comparing like a flat sheet of paper, I don't know, to some sort of wood ball. They're just going to interact with their environment very differently. And the next one, kind of people in that space will go, well, hey, this is nanotechnology, and they're just going to put radio frequency receivers and robots in you. This is 60 carbon atoms. We have a problem. There's actually a really, and it was a long time ago, but there was IBM once published a paper because they were able to put individual silicon atoms in the shape of the IBM logo, right? It was a big deal because it's incredibly hard to move one atom at a time. This is just 60. It's not going to work as a radio receiver. It's not going to work as a robot. It could eventually be some part of a robot, but they're not going to be self-assembling in your body. I can't even remember what movie they do that. So a lot of these concerns, like we need to be thinking about these things, right? And then we apply science to them and understand, okay, we're safe in this area.
Excellent. That's a great description. Because, yes, I know we've got a lot of fear right now, and there's a lot of stuff out there. Now, the other thing on the nanoparticles, not being so much robots and things of that nature, there's a lot of talk about nanoparticles getting stuck in the body. They can never come back out. They create, like, I call it cosmic waste. Can you explain to folks a little bit about that?
Well, this might, in fact, be some of the solution, right? So when you think about detoxing agents, a lot of them, they're going to be diatomaceous earth. You're going to be thinking about activated charcoal. These are things that are never actually getting into your body, right? If you think about the pool noodle, right, and it's got a hole through the middle, and if you drop a marble through the middle of the pool noodle, did it ever become part of the pool noodle? Right? Well, we are a pool noodle, right? From mouth to anus, we're that pool noodle, and it actually has to get in. It has to actually get into the foam. We're having fun here. It has to get into the foam, right? You have to get past that gut barrier in order to get into your system. And diatomaceous earth and activated charcoal are not doing that. We did a study with the University of Houston Mechanical Engineering Department where we gave the raw material from which we extract this ESS-60 molecule. We gave that to them, and they said it performed as well or better than activated charcoal. So imagine an activated charcoal that does actually have access to getting into our system and now can serve the same purpose, this binding purpose. This is all theories, by the way, right? I'm not going to say like we know that this goes directly in and binds with XYZ and takes it out. This is all theoretically possible. And then you'll kind of hear the testimonials and how we actually think this is working at the mitochondrial level. And then the story all comes together. But imagine you've got that activated charcoal in your system able to bond with those things that you don't want it to bond with. The data suggests that this molecule gets out of your body in 10 days. And I'm going to hop right in because we've got one very specific testimonial that we get repeatedly, but this one's very specific. My business coach says that for 50 years before trying our product, he needed the alarm clock. Now, when he's on the product, he wakes up before the alarm clock. And he's a business coach. So he's like networking, glasses of wine, late dinners, whatever. He's waking up before the alarm clock every time he's on the product. At about 10 days after not taking the product, he needs the alarm clock again, right? And that's kind of his and this is just repeated. I don't know, over the last 5 years, we've repeated this, somewhere between 5 and 10 times, where it's 10 days in. So our understanding is that it's excreted out of the body in 10 days.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And folks who are listening, that's kind of like a half-life thing if you're thinking about that in terms of how long something's going to stay in. And then maybe a little bit of derivative from half-life, not exactly that's a full life.
Yeah, I think thought process is full life. When we start realizing, we know from peer-reviewed published research that this gets into the mitochondria, so we have a theory about what it's doing there. But yeah, is there going to be some lingering particles that also may come out? Yeah, I think that is the reality. And at this point, you start looking at the data that we have, and you start going, this is probably worth trying.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's dive into how it works, what's going on, because I was hearing, we had talked about graphene oxide, and I'm not to beat a dead horse, but with the oxide, guys, when you hear that word, I mean, that's kind of like something that you don't necessarily want those molecules. You want antioxidant kind of molecules, and I'm dumbing this down quite a bit. So I'm going to let you take over before I get myself into word salad and weeds.
If it's all right, could we walk through this journey of how we're even in the health space?
Yeah.
Okay, so
let's do it.
So the molecule's discovered 85. The scientists win the Nobel Prize in 96. My company starts manufacturing it in 91, 5 years before they won the Nobel Prize. I'm kind of proud. The fact that we were delivering appreciable quantities to researchers is probably why they knew how important this discovery was, and probably part of the reason that they won the Nobel Prize. So very proud to have been involved that early. The molecule is absolutely amazing. The way I describe it is it performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So it makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. And if you were nervous at graphene oxide, I just said inks, batteries, tires, and photocells. Maybe you're getting a little nervous because no one woke up this morning and thought, my car's right there, it's got a battery. I wonder what parts of my battery I should be consuming on a daily basis. But the story does get a little worse first. So this one shape on the exterior, so just one of the panels on the soccer ball molecule, is the same shape as benzene. Benzene is ubiquitous in our society, and we absolutely need it for modern society. Evidence? Look around you, imagine everything that's plastic, gone. The foundational molecule is benzene. Many medications, the foundational molecule is benzene, including aspirin. Detergents, same thing, a lot of detergents. So we don't have modern society without benzene. It is everywhere. But when benzene is all on its own, it's known to be toxic and known to be carcinogenic. So the fact that its shape is actually repeated on the exterior of this ESS-60 molecule, they thought it would be toxic. They put it in a toxicity study. Instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case it was Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group. So the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, peer-reviewed published research, is because of this ESS-60 molecule dissolved in olive oil. A high-quality extra virgin olive oil in this case. So that's a fantastic study that changed my trajectory and my business partner from being happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientists to getting into the health space and really kind of bringing us to this point. I'm going to share. So that study comes out in 2012. We start getting phone calls from this wacky group of people. For this podcast, I'm going to call them health addicts instead of biohackers. This wacky group of people health addicts start calling us and saying, how much of this should I consume? And my business partner, ultra-conservative carbon nanomaterial scientist, what we're hearing is, hey, Chris, that stuff you sell to research institutions around the world to put into inks, batteries, tires, and photocells, how much of that stuff should we consume? Our first response was, yeah, probably zero. Now, let me be clear. The literature was clear that it was safe. We're just conservative scientists thinking about the car battery going, no, you shouldn't do that. So we add not for human consumption to our labeling. And then the same group of health addicts start calling us. We're getting 2 to 3 calls a week, and they're like, hey, Chris, my knee pain is gone. And I'm like, Mr. or Mrs. Health Addict, you mean the knee pain of your rat, right? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling. And they're like, yeah. Hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Tuesdays and Thursdays, how much should my rat be taking? So we know, we know what's going on. There's a little bit of tongue in cheek. My business partner and I are getting together every quarter. Do we want to get into this space? I think you would agree a very politically correct way to describe the supplement industry is challenged. It's a challenged industry. We didn't really want to be in that industry. And in fact, I found a paper where 50% of the products that this research group had purchased on the market did not have in them what they said they had in them, right? So this is not the space that we wanted to be in. Finally, a guy with a big YouTube following, this is the latter part of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following started talking about all the benefits he was getting, taking it on a daily basis. And our phone went from, these wacky health addicts calling 2 to 3 times a week to 10 phone calls a day. My business partner and I kind of slowed down and were like, hey, this is an entrepreneurial opportunity beyond which we ever imagined. And if we look back at that paper where 50% of the supplements in the market don't have in them what they say they have in them, that's going to happen in this space. We're a unique group. We've been working with this molecule longer than anyone on the planet. We actually have the lab. We actually have the know-how to manufacture this at an extremely high quality. And then we asked ourselves 2 questions. The first is a moral question. Are we comfortable selling it? I take it. My wife takes it. Everybody on our team here takes it. By the way, that's not a requirement. You do not have to take the product to work on our team here. They just have access to the research. They have access to the testimonials through the customer service team. And so they do take it. And then the other is legal, right? Here, we have to be mindful of the FTC and the FDA. You got to cross the T's. You got to dot the I's. And so we are doing that. And that's when we launched in 2018. To bring this to market. And my role as the chief scientist was to, one, is a 90% extension of life a big deal? Yes, it absolutely is. Your intuition is correct. And then 2, how might this be working? And I'm going to walk through kind of my evolution of how I pictured this working. First, our most consistent testimonial is people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. If you just improve sleep, you will improve your mental, physical, and emotional well-being, right? This is a pillar of health. Fix your health. If you're listening to this and your sleep is not that good, fix your sleep. So much is going to get better if you fix your sleep. And I'm sure you preach that regularly, right? Is that a mantra?
It's that, and I might have worn it out a little bit too with some, oh, not again.
If you're really addicted to your health, you should really be addicted to your sleep, right? Because that is really the pillar. So if we're improving sleep, we're improving everything, right? Next is I looked at, 90% extension of life. How does the medical community tend to think about aging? They tend to think it's an oxidation and an inflammation process. And we can check both of those boxes. And I'll walk us through that because inflammation, you have to be careful with the FDA. In terms of antioxidant, there's an ad hoc study on the web showing us to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. And there's peer-reviewed published research that shows us to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So I'm in Texas. That means we put a big old checkbox right on antioxidant. When it comes to inflammation, the FDA equates discussions about chronic inflammation with discussions about the diseases of chronic inflammation, which are also the diseases of aging. So if I tell you we reduce chronic inflammation, what the FDA hears me saying is we cure cancer and cardiovascular disease and arthritis, which we are not claiming. We all can agree we're not claiming that. There's so much research that needs to be done to get to that point. What the FDA does allow us to say is that we address inflammation, at least that inflammation that is related to exercise-induced inflammation, right? So we've all had a tough workout or maybe a longer walk than normal and felt that inflammation in our body. So we can put a big old check mark next to inflammation. And I'll bring up inflammation one more time. I have a fun theory about what we think it's doing in the mitochondria. Well, it's geeky first and then it's fun. But I've been talking so long, I really want to turn it back over to you in case you want to take it in a different direction.
No, I want to learn about this. Go for it. It's interesting to me to hear it. So yeah, go for it. Tell me more.
Awesome. So the theory is called the BOSS theory, buffering oxidative stress system. So we know from peer-reviewed published research that this ESS-60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. We also know from way back in the 90s that this molecule can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of this cage. So what we believe it's doing, and we'll do a super brief refresher, mitochondria, powerhouse of every cell. There's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, except for blood cells, which have 0, and brain and neurons, which have 2 million. That's how much energy our nervous system uses relative to our other systems. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and like every powerhouse we're familiar with, there's a negative byproduct. Your car going down the road has exhaust. Your power plant has a smokestack with smoke. Your mitochondria have reactive oxygen species. The way I describe these are like negatively and positively charged particles that run around like little bumper cars, and they rust everything that they bump into. They're causing that oxidative stress or oxidative damage. Inside the mitochondria, you have 2 key antioxidants to manage those reactive oxygen species, and that's glutathione and melatonin. By the way, melatonin, the sleep hormone, a nice parallel with our most consistent testimonial related to sleep. When a mitochondria gets overwhelmed, it's producing more reactive oxygen species than the glutathione and melatonin can manage. That's when they run around and do a bunch of damage, and that's when we think this ESS-60 molecule comes in. We believe that it holds on to those negatively charged particles so they can't do any damage. And then when that particular mitochondria can replenish the glutathione and melatonin, then it can manage them properly. And I have a fun analogy, and that's, again, this theory is called the BOSS theory, buffering oxidative stress system. Like all biological analogies, it starts with Mardi Gras. It's the end of Mardi Gras, and you're like, where is this going?
Okay.
It's the end of, well, there's addicts there, health addicts in this case. All right, so it's the end of Mardi Gras. You have these drunk reactive oxygen species running around Bourbon Street, smashing up cars, spray painting, doing whatever drunk reactive oxygen species do. And you've got the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and the melatonin, coming in and handcuffing themselves to these reactive oxygen species and getting them off of Bourbon Street. But what does the New Orleans Police Department do when they are overwhelmed? They take these reactive oxygen species and they stick them in a paddy wagon. They attach them to the exterior of this ESS-60 molecule so they can't do any damage. And then when the glutathione is replenished and the melatonin is replenished, they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. And that's why we say the ESS-60 molecule is the boss, again, that buffering oxidative stress system. And if you're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, you should, in fact, have head-to-toe testimonials, which is, in fact, something we do. We have head-to-toe testimonials.
So just thinking, I like the paddy wagon and the police department kind of example, because it does tell us kind of a little bit more detail. Because I think a lot of people, they know what the mitochondria kind of does, but they're not really sure how it all plays in. Now, the other part of it is thinking through this concept of, okay, maybe someone's been tested and they're like, my glutathione isn't low. Maybe they've been tested and said my melatonin isn't low, but we still know that they're fatigued all day long. Maybe they can just go for a walk and they cannot recover from just that. And I'm talking some folks that might have like chronic health issues here, kind of stuff, lupus, etc. And so when someone's gone down that route, and obviously there's not really a test to know if you're deficient in carbon per se.
Yeah.
So
well, not this particular molecule for sure, right? Because it's hard to test for. Everyone, because it's naturally occurring in a candle flame, right? The soot from a candle has been exposed to it, just not at appreciable quantity. So that's not even a test that I would lean on. And I've actually got some ideas, but keep going.
Yeah. No, I'm what I'm thinking is like, okay, I just want to get to the point is like, sometimes we have things that can benefit us that don't have tests that show us that we need it. That's one thing. The other side of it is that you're kind of bringing up a point that maybe, because we've pushed the glutathione concept very heavily. It's hard to get in the body. The Dalton size is too big. We're thinking about that. So VitalC gets in. And so guys, back to ESS-60. I don't want to confuse VitalC in yet. We'll get there. But we get that in and folks are thinking like, okay, so it can go anywhere. It can be head to toe. It doesn't really have like a honing device. So it's just going to go to wherever you're producing more antioxidants in the body, correct?
Well, where you're producing,
most oxidants, sorry, not antioxidants.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so I'm just trying to think of, I know growing up, I was like, how does aspirin know to go to my brain or my elbow, right? And it kind of doesn't. Right? It's just going everywhere, and in some places it actually serves a purpose, and other places it just passes through. And I think that's probably what's true with the ESS-60 molecule. It's coming into a mitochondria. It's, if that mitochondria is stressed, probably is, wow, we're really personifying this, but it's probably hanging out. Hey, I'll hold on to these, I'll be your paddy wagon for a little while and then head out. I think there might be I have one more analogy that might serve the purpose, right? So your glutathione and your melatonin levels are good, which means that you should be able to handle regular stress, right? I kind of picture like the human body and stress like a prairie. Stress is good, by the way. Like anybody who's like, I just want a zero stress life. Imagine you go up into space as an astronaut and you come back and you're frail and a feeble creature, right? Like they have to do intense exercises and they still come back with lower bone density, lower immune systems, like all of these things just by removing the stress of gravity. So I picture us as like a prairie, nice little prairie flowers, and the rain is the stress. And if it's the right amount of stress, that's great. The prairie is thriving. But imagine you have one deep, dark cloud that's just pouring in one spot. Like this is the stress of exercise or smog or a tough email, hard conversation. It's going to do damage to the prairie. And that's where we think this ESS-60 molecule kind of gets between the cloud and the prairie, acts like a sponge or a beaker holding it so that it doesn't do that damage. Now, one very important thing to note is it's one sponge or one beaker. If that stress keeps pouring down, eventually it's going to be full. Eventually it's going to run over the side. Eventually it's going to hit the prairie and do the damage, right? So this is good for managing peak stresses is what we believe. And then once that stress, that deep dark cloud is gone, then you can actually dump this out over the prairie gently and you're not doing any damage. So you could imagine that your current glutathione, your normal glutathione and melatonin are in homeostasis in that prairie to manage that rain that's coming down. But what happens when you pour it in one spot? And that's when it gets overwhelmed. So we don't think of this as a replacement for either glutathione or melatonin. We believe it as it adds value by making sure when they're stressed, when that mitochondria is stressed and you're overwhelming the glutathione and melatonin, that it prevents the damage in the first place. And I'm going to add one other piece that I think is really important. We realize that reactive oxygen species are an important signaling molecule. If you're stressing your mitochondria, it needs to like send out distress signals and go, hey, like this is not working right. I need to do some mitogenesis, right? So we need to create some more mitochondria so we can create some more power, or I just need help, whatever that is. If I need more nutrients to make more glutathione and melatonin, then that's what I need. So you need those stress signals. Well, those stress signals tend to be the positive charged reactive oxygen species. This ESS-60 molecule holds on to the negatively charged ones. The negatively ones are also the more damaging ones. So you're holding on to the damaged ones. The positive ones are still going out and doing their signals so that your body can understand that it's, under stress, under attack or whatever, and so those normal bodily functions can occur. And so that's kind of how I picture how like a good glutathione and melatonin level might still manifest with some slight increase of stress. You've got no way to mitigate it.
Sure. At the end of the day, it sounds like ESS-60 takes out the trash, literally. Like,
yeah. Well,
poop by
again, we think it holds on to the trash.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So imagine your house without a trash bin,
Mm-hmm.
and now the ESS-60 molecule is the trash bin. Right? So it's holding all of that stuff. It's not getting rid of it. You still got to take it out to the street. You still got to, dump it in the compactor or whatever you're doing. But it's so much better. Your house, your environment, your prairie has so much less litter all around it because it is actually being held inside of the ESS-60. Well, again, I don't want to miss it. Like nothing is getting inside of here. It's being held on the exterior of the cage.
Okay. And so what that tells me then is someone's got to make sure that they're hydrated well. We're doing all the other things to be able to help the ESS-60 grab things, take it down, out, whatever way we go.
Yeah, the reality is if you go back to that kind of prairie and you've got that stream of stress, if you're not managing the stream of stress, eventually it's going to fill up and eventually it's going to overflow, and it's going to get back to impinging on that prairie and doing the damage. Right. So that stress is, if you're dehydrated, that's stressful, right? Even, fasting is stressful. Again, stresses are good. You've got to have the right level of stress, and you probably should be pushing your incrementally the amount of stress that your body is able to take, everything is able to take, but you've got to do it within reason. And as soon as you get outside of your own current physical status of what is reasonable, then things start to fall apart. This can help, but you still got to be moving you want to be moving in the right direction. This isn't, hey, take this and you don't have to worry. Like, you can be a couch potato.
Yes, that's where I was going with this. Yeah, because I think for a lot of people, and a lot of my audience is women 35 to 55, and we're going through perimenopause, we're going through menopause. There's a lot of changes, and a lot of it is fatigue related, difficulty, with workouts. We're feeling like, what the heck is going on with the body? So it sounds like it's a very good supportive agent to help us with things that happen with aging, and help with the mitochondria as well.
Yeah, we actually have, and I know I mentioned this before, but we actually have a box or bottle that's branded. So this is our typical bottle. We have one that's branded for menopause. It literally is the same thing. We branded it actually at so my wife is from Panama. She talks about menopause in Spanish and has quite a hefty following on TikTok. It's kind of cool. We're on a cruise and she got recognized, and that's kind of cool. But she's a big, like, this is the only thing that she takes, and she'll say that regularly. She's probably a bigger, more enthusiastic proponent of the product than I am, maybe because the impact it had for her during menopause. She went through it early. And she was struggling with the symptoms of menopause right about that time. Was when we were bringing this product to market. With spouses, it's hard to convince them to, like, you should take this. What do you know about health? Well, I know a little because I know this. I know the boss theory. And so eventually I got her to take it. It was actually kind of after a bout with a flu, and she was so much better the next day after she took it, and then noticed the impact that it had on her menopause symptoms, that she's a big proponent. And on her channel, we'll kind of promote our product regularly. So she's pretty spectacular.
What's your wife's name, so folks can also find her?
So it is in Spanish. So she's from Panama. It's in Spanish, but it's kind of go look up. In fact, if you look up Marissa, Marissa, and last name is Burres, Burres, you'll find her channel on TikTok and Instagram is actually Mujeres Vivaces, so like vivacious women, and you'll find it, and it's like, she has a lot of followers. Like, we'll be like, I'll be talking with other health addicts at whatever conference, and then they start talking to her and like, oh, you're actually famous. Like, she has a lot of followers. It's pretty cool.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, you never know. I mean, I don't know my demographic in terms of language, but nevertheless, It's fun. It's fun stuff. Yeah. So cool. So I think for a lot of people, they're kind of going like, okay, cool. I can see I can get behind this. Have you guys done any research or studies in terms of pairing it with anything, like pairing it, like, my brain's just going to like precursors for glutathione, like actually vitamin C, and vitamin E or alpha lipoic or any of that stuff? Has anyone else?
NAC. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've thought about that. In fact, we thought recently, I'm preparing for an interview with Naya Patel. I think that's right. He has a spray on glutathione product. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I think it's Aura, Aura glutathione. So I'm about to interview him. And as I'm going through this, especially the first 2 chapters of his book, I'm looking at it going, okay, this is how glutathione has impact in the mitochondria. It's expanding my knowledge of how the boss theory fits in with glutathione. So to put something with glutathione, right? If you think about this prairie, right? You've got the glutathione and melatonin are actually the managing experts. I need to come up with I need a couch potato analogy, right? So that we can get people off the couch. But when you're having that load, if you just had a pile of glutathione sitting there, then it could manage this, impinging dirt. I mean, this impinging stream from the cloud. So we've thought about that. In some regard, we're getting so many good testimonials just with the existing product. I'm torn. This actually starts to become a business and a marketing decision, right? Can we market it and then go like, hey, you like glutathione, you should try this. You like whatever NAC, which is a great glutathione precursor, then you should try this. Or is it just, let's just get this molecule into as many hands as possible? At this point, when I go to a biohacking or health addict conference, about 30% of people have either heard of C60 or ESS-60. When you get outside of that space, it's 99.9% of people have not heard of it. And so there's just so much more work to be done in that space. I wrestle with, do we want to combine it? What impact, what impact on marketing would that have?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And I think, as my brain thinks about hacking and thinks about like how am I going to amplify this, it's usually kind of the background in my head and also thinking like what other factors here can help and make it work longer, faster, more
Yeah.
robust. That's kind of the health junkie brain as a whole. And we're like, how does it pair with hormones? And how do, I don't know if you have any background data on folks talking about that. It sounds like your wife's not even using hormones. She's just using VitalC. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
cool.
No, that's the only thing that she uses. And I think her advice was not to. And then I've had, on my podcast, it's become one of my favorite subjects because like I have so many conversations about menopause. And then certainly I was there with my wife during menopause, which is, it's rough. Like that's whoever's going through it. That's a rough period for you and then your relationships and just all sorts of stuff. One of the thoughts, right? And this is just a theory also, when you get the mitochondria right, the mitochondria is intimately involved in a lot of the hormones that are produced. And so if you're getting that right, if you're reducing the negative impact of stress mitochondria, then you're going to have a positive impact on how the hormones are going throughout your body. So that's a theory, but again, it's supported by these head to toe testimonials.
Yeah.
And actually I'll share one because a lot of people will ask, how quickly might I notice something, right? Because that's something that you want to know. Our biggest distributor here in Houston is a lady by the name of Gwen, and she originally ordered the product for her dog only. She was not interested in taking it herself, and she noticed such a profound difference in her dog that she decided to take it herself. Now, I like to pause there because there is no placebo. Like if this is new and if you're a discerning health addict, you're like, what percentage of this is a placebo? Because placebo plays a part and so does nocebo in literally everything you take. So what percentage? When it comes to pets, there's 0% placebo. Ironically, they're not smart enough to know they got their little dropper of oil that day, and so they should have more energy that day. And so she noticed such a profound difference in her dog that she started taking it. And I did an interview with her, and she said at the 3-month mark, if you had asked me if I'd noticed anything, my knee-jerk response would have been no. But then I kind of slowed down and I took stock of my life. And I realized I'm working later, right? I'm getting more work done. I'm actually waking up earlier. I was never really a morning person. And then arguably the worst testimonial about a supplement in history, she shared that she cleaned her garage. We don't use that in any marketing material. You want to clean your garage? Take this product. But cleaning your garage does in fact mean something, right? It's a lot of work. Maybe there's emotional baggage. We actually have testimonials related to kind of, we'll call it emotional fortitude. So cleaning the garage does mean something. We also, on the shorter end, right? So that's 3 months. I didn't really notice anything. I also have a video from a lady who, she took it in the morning. She recorded the video that night and she pointed out that she did not finish her cup of coffee that morning. If you're a coffee drinker and you've noticed that you didn't finish your cup of coffee, then you're the kind of person who knows you need a cup of coffee, like to get through the day, and it didn't. So we do see some same day testimonials, and then we see some kind of longer term. And so probably 5% of our customers like, hey, I haven't noticed anything, and they'll stop, and then they'll notice what they didn't notice. And then they'll get back on the product. It's kind of like my business partner who kind of stops and then 10 days later is like, I need my alarm clock again. Like if you woke up, I very comfortably will call my business coach not normal. Most people maybe wouldn't even notice that they're waking up before the alarm clock, right? You're just kind of sitting in bed and the alarm clock goes off. And like these are subtle differences that really have a profound impact. Getting a deeper sleep is something that is reported. In fact, we did do a survey study. It's a crossover study. So far, we only have 10 people through it. Our goal is 25. We asked them survey questions 10 days prior to trying the product. And these questions were, how easy was it to fall asleep? How restless was your sleep? How good was your sleep? How good did you feel in the morning, right? And we asked those survey questions 10 days before they tried the product, 10 days when they were on the product, 10 days back off the product, and then 10 days back on the product. 100% of the participants reported improvements in sleep when they were on the product. And that parallels this. I almost forgot to mention this. Do you work with HSCRP numbers at any point? Okay, so you're going to appreciate this, and we'll get in and explain it. At the last A4M, so that's American Association of Anti-Aging, they have an event called Longevity Fest, and we had a booth in Vegas. And this Dr. Lane Young came up to us. I had had a conversation with him at Dave Asprey's biohacking conference in Dallas. He came up, and as soon as he said this, I said, Dr. Young, can I record this? And he goes, yeah, sure. So I recorded it, so I have it. He said, Chris, I don't care if you're male, female, pre-surgery, post-surgery, cardiovascular disease, otherwise healthy, our product, so MyVitalC, reduces elevated HSCRP numbers to within normal ranges in 4 to 8 weeks. His particular example was he had a client at 9 that his protocols weren't able to move 4 to 8, it's actually 4 to 8 weeks is what he says. 4 to 8 weeks later, it was down to 0.9. Now, you're kind of familiar with HSCRP. Yeah. 9, not a good number. Like, that's a number to avoid. I later had a conversation with an oncologist who said an HSCRP of 9 in the oncology world means you have cancer until we prove otherwise. Right? Like, that's how elevated that number is. And then Dr. Young, this is what kind of reminded me of this. He went on to say, and in terms of HRV, so heart rate variability, and sleep, the people were reporting a 20 to 60% improvement in those numbers, HRV numbers and deep sleep numbers, when they were on the product in 4 to 8 weeks. So this is, again, going to support this. If you're supporting that mitochondria, reducing the negative impact of stress mitochondria, so everything is going to be better. Wow, that's a scary statement, right? Like, if you're like, the mitochondria is going to be positively impacted, and there's mitochondria in every cell in your body except for blood cells, and all of it's going to be better. Like, that's kind of why we had to come up with distinct packaging for like sleep and focus and exercise recovery. We actually have one called party recovery because that is a real thing with this product. And then, one focused on menopause.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. There's marketing. We have to kind of know that what we're taking is specific for that, because otherwise, I mean, I will be honest, seeing something that says ESS-60, you kind of are like, German,
Never heard of it.
Like, what is this? It's like BPC 157. It's like the peptides, the numbers and letters and whatnot. It's like, it gets you a little bit like, what is this?
Well, and if you're like me, I had to hear about BBC 157 and TB 500 together, right? From about 5 people that I truly respect and also are respected by lots of people. And they're like, yeah, maybe I'll try that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm kind of thinking this would be a good combo with peptides, to be honest, just especially for exercise recovery for folks who are struggling, but also just in general, since fatigue really is one of those things that I've gotten frustrated with over the years, because we go down the route of like, is there a mold thing? Is there a Lyme thing? Is there, you name it, all the possible contributors. And sometimes you work on rabbit holes and things don't get better. And so, a lot of folks who are dealing with chronic stuff are looking for something that's going to move the needle. Right. And that's where this industry gets a little tricky, because it does, every product does like get them thinking like, oh, this is good. This is going to be it. This is going to be it. This is going to be the magical thing. But at the same time, like you're saying, you have 10 days where folks are noticing like, okay, it wears off. So it means that a couple different things. One, we can get the mitochondria working better. We have potential to get them to work better. We can use this, to help come off of surgeries, and things of that nature. We could cycle it. I've got all kinds of different ideas in my head. And of course, for marketing, we want it 24/7. But I can also see how we can use this and be on and off of it to cycle and get over certain things in life too, and then bring back like reinforce the healthy lifestyle stuff.
So cycling is interesting, because in reality, there is a lot of work. Our typical serving is 5 mils, right? So it's 5 mils. The product is typically sold in a bottle. 5 mils is 1 teaspoon, and we recommend daily. And I'll just real quick, we have an MCT version, we have an olive oil version, and we have an avocado version. My routine every day is I put about 1.5 teaspoons of the MCT in my coffee, right? It's actually in this cup of coffee here. And while that's blending, right, oil and water, while that's blending, I'm actually taking 1.5 teaspoons of our olive oil. So I'm taking a little bit extra. If I'm back to back, podcasts or meetings or whatever, at some point I'll probably take another shot, just because it really is good for the energy. And then certainly if I'm actually drinking a lot less wine, actually no wine now, because I'm apparently sensitive to grapes, which is probably a great thing. But if I'm having a drink or two, then I can also have another one. I can tell you in the past, I used to drink a lot more, and I would definitely have extra shots of the ESS-60 because it just mitigated the challenges that you would have in that environment. Well, let's just do like the pain you might feel in the morning. We'll call it that. And so, but what I'm going to share is, so we have say all that to say, like, we could probably hone in on dosing. There's probably the right thing for what you're doing. I lean on this guy, Anthony Kunkel. So he's a big proponent of our product. He's a 2-time U.S. ultra running champion. So he won a championship at 50 miles and at 50K, which is 62 miles. If anybody's stressing their body, their mitochondria, it is him. He's currently running about 200 miles a week. And my first conversation with him was pretty interesting, because he said, Chris, I when I first started your product, I was taking 1 serving. I didn't really notice anything. And then I joke, like all good biohackers or health addicts, he tripled the serving. By the way, don't do that on everything. There are things you should absolutely never triple. And I'm going to just do like one that comes at rapamycin. Don't triple the serving. That's a bad plan. But so he tripled the serving, and his statement was, I was like, wow, this could be the difference between somebody having running as a hobby and somebody having running as a career. And the way he said it was, I don't believe this improves exercise recovery. I believe it reduces the damage, prevents the damage in the first place. That's the right phrase. I believe this prevents damage in the first place. And his argument was, the reason I believe that is because on the last 5 miles of a 50-mile run, a phrase you don't hear very often, I've only ever heard it from Anthony. So on the last 5 miles of a 50-mile run, where strength and stability used to be a problem, they're no longer a problem. And if you think about, again, reducing the negative impact of those stressed mitochondria, then yeah, that makes sense, right? He's got this dark cloud. It's bigger than most people's cloud. It's dumping a lot more water as he's running 50 miles than most people, and would normally do a lot more damage. But you've got this ESS-60 molecule, this battery of ESS-60 molecules protecting that prairie. And then, so it absorbs them, right? It's that sponge that holds on to them. And then he turns around and he's doing all the biohacking stuff. He's doing the red light therapy. He's doing, cold plunges. He's doing something, like, he's just doing everything to then release that stress, relax that stress, and prepare for the next thing. The reason I brought him up is he actually thought that the impact on him physiologically was so profound, he was concerned it would be like a crutch. Like it would be in the case of testosterone. If you start taking testosterone, your natural supply of testosterone dwindles, right? Your body's like, oh, there's lots of it floating around. We don't need to make any, which is not, which is a negative aspect of, potentially testosterone replacement therapy. So he was worried about that. He cycled on. He's an incredibly talented biohacker. He cycled on and off. And then now he just takes it regularly. Like he starts his training block with MCT, which has a lower concentration of the ESS-60 molecule and good weight control, right? MCT is good for kind of hunger suppression. So good weight control. And then he ramps up to the olive oil, which has the highest concentration. And that's what he's taking going into competitions.
Okay. Definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense of the different uses and different ways you can do it. I know a lot of people are going to be intrigued and thinking, okay, all right, I definitely am curious. Now, if someone's super sensitive, I heard you say ramp up with the olive oil version. Is it if someone, because I will also have this happen, it's a phenomenon I think happens in perimenopause and beyond. We have a lot of histamines. So bringing something into the body, sometimes there'll be a pop off of that. It could be because of the nervous system. It could be just straight, histamine insensitivity. What kind of advice would you give to someone that's going, okay, I want to try this. I have sensitivity. I have to take lower levels of everything. What would they do? What would that be like?
Well, one, I would lean on what is your current olive oil consumption? Because a lot of people are consuming some amount of olive oil. Where does that sit? And if the answer is 0, then you might want to try titrate this up, right? So you might want to try 1/4 of a teaspoon first, maybe even 1/8 of a teaspoon, if you're sensitive to so many things. I do think that olive oil is typically on, if you think about the AIP protocol, like the autoimmune protocol, like let's get only the anti-inflammatory foods, which probably, correct me if I'm wrong, have a lot of parallels with histamine-inducing foods. That olive oil is on that list. And so probably pretty safe. I can tell you, I did meet one individual who he described it allergic or sensitive to olive oil and MCT oil. MCT blew me away. Like that's just such a refined component. And so he could only take the avocado. And so we gave him a bottle of the avocado. But yeah, if you're super concerned, you want to titrate this, you can titrate this up for sure. So if we think about about, people will ask, are there any negative side effects? There are none reported at this point, and no contraindications with any medications. Certainly, ask your doctor if it's depending on what the medication is. You want to ask your doctor, have a conversation. It might be a difficult conversation because they probably have never heard of this, but they can dig into the research and, or reach out to us. We've got kind of PDFs with like, hey, here's what we understand it to do in different animal models. And so you could titrate it up. Negative. We use a high quality extra virgin olive oil. When you take it, a high quality extra virgin olive oil will leave a peppery flavor at the back of your throat. And some people are not used to that. And they're like, oh, there's a peppery flavor. Is it rancid? No, that's actually a sign of a high quality extra virgin olive oil. And so that's one thing that we get. If you don't have any oil in your diet and you add even just a teaspoon, so 5 mils, it can make your stool loose. Like, we're not talking, Dave Asprey's disaster pants, but we are talking about a little loose stool that you will notice. That's usually about 2 days, maybe 3 days, and your body gets used to that oil. And then there's, it's not even really a problem. It's just something that you would probably notice. Other than that, no, we don't have any complaints. There's a small percentage of people who say if they take it later in the day, it will keep them up. I think what's happening is their brain is very active, and if they were allow themselves to close their eyes and put their head on the pillow, they would actually fall asleep. But I think there's some people that are just wired. Like, if I'm wired, then I'm not going to bed. So for that reason, we typically recommend you take it in the morning. And by the way, this is pretty fantastic because our most consistent testimonial is people take it in the morning. They report mental focus and energy during the day and then better sleep that night. What can you take? Like, what are you aware of that you can take in the morning to positively impact sleep at night? I've never taken anything that reports that. Certainly, if you got exercise in the morning, better sleep at night. If you got exposure to the sun, get your circadian rhythm in line with the rising and falling of the sun, that will help you sleep that night. But I don't know if you're aware of anything that fits in that category.
No, not unless we put an extended release on it from a compounded pharmacy. No.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Very intrigued. Very intrigued. Can't wait to try your product out. I
We're
definitely.
going to send you a whole care package. Do you have any pets?
Yes, I do. I have a cat and a dog.
A cat and a dog. So just for fun, we'll send you both, but just for fun, it's always interesting. We sell so much more dog than cat product. Cat owners are just not that interested in their cats being, maybe they don't realize they're less healthy, or I don't know. Maybe they secretly hate their cats the way this cats secretly hate them. No, by the way, I'm a cat
Definitely
person.
different.
I love cats, right? So this is all just the stereotypes of where cats and dogs sit. But we sell 3-to-1 dog to cat.
I think it's because cats live longer. I think people
Yeah.
just don't, like dogs, we want them to live like as long as like the longest cat in the 20s.
Yeah.
I would think that.
Well, and they're just very reclusive, right? So when they're in pain or hurting, you kind of don't see them. They're just off sleeping and they're catnapping all day. And you don't realize that it's gone from 4 hours to 8 to 10, and then you're like, oh, I guess it's too late.
Right. No, I'd absolutely love to see my golden retriever is 7 years old. He's starting to age a little. I'd like to see what that can do for him. I mean, I'm curious of myself. I mean, Sam, our cat's 8 months old. He's a little bit of a terrorist, so I don't know if I want him to have.
Yeah. I even with puppies, although we have one testimonial, actually, I'll share this with the guy who gave us the testimonial is Kai Zadowski. And if I'm not right on his name, I'm really close. He's the owner of the franchise OsteoStrong, which builds bone density. I don't know if you heard of them. They're pretty cool. He gave me a testimonial. I recorded an interview with him, and he gave me a testimonial. His son brought home the runt of a litter, a pug that was the runt of the litter. It could only basically run in circles. It could barely eat. It was like it was perpetually dizzy because it had water on its brain. I happened to send him the product, the care package, like 3 days after he got the dog. They were giving the dog triple servings per day. And the dog at the point of the review was like 80% better. And when he took it back to the vet was like, this is basically a miracle. Like, we thought we were going to have to put that dog down. So I think that's kind of the only position that I would give a puppy, because they just have so much. They don't need any more energy. They kind of don't need any more sleep, right? Because they're, when they've drained their energy, they fall immediately to sleep, right? So, but yeah, as they start to age, I think it really, and that's where we get in terms of pets, the really strong. Like, one was I used to have to carry my dog down the stairs to go to the outside to go to the bathroom. Now he's back to bounding up the stairs.
Just for being a pet lover, that's definitely something that, oddly enough, people will spend more money on their pets than themselves. We know that,
Yes.
hands down. And, it's, hey, try it out on your pet. I'm kind of thinking try it out on your pet first, and if it looks good to you there, then you can go to yourself as well. But of course, the background and the thought process on how everything works, the boss theory, all of that makes a lot of sense. And we don't really have anything other than glutathione and methylation processes and things like that. If we're looking at our cells and cell detox and mitochondrial detox, we don't really have a lot of great solid things like
Mm,
PQQ and NAD. Like, yes, they can help, but I don't see like the testimonials you're giving me today with that. So I'm
mm,
curious. I'm very curious as to what.
I'll share a couple of mine. So we talk about kind of where my own inflammation is. We were recently at the Health Optimization Summit in Austin. Great event. And Tim Gray throws an amazing event. And the booth next to us, we just got lucky because I often don't have time to go visit the booths or whatever. He happened to be at the booth next to us. He's a former Apple employee who put in an ERC test into a home kit. And that's a erythrocyte test that's looking at, you take a blood sample and the rate at which the plasma separates from the blood cells is an indication of inflammation. And so you do a finger prick, you put blood into this capillary tube, you put it, with gravity, and it's got this device that'll measure it. It's like $10 per test, and the device is $300. I don't have any commissions with him. It's just super cool technology. I took his test, and he has a biological component to it. And he said that my biological age was 20 plus years younger than my current age. I'm just about to turn 56 here very soon. Yeah, in a month. And so 20 years younger. You look at glycan age. I don't know if you're familiar with this test. It's looking at glycans. That's how a sugar attaches to different blood cells in your blood sample. As with a lot of things, it has a very downward curve as you get older, and it is a good indication of inflammation, how much inflammation you have in your system. That test is probably my favorite. I took it when I was 54. It had me at 21. So I don't even know if I want to be younger. Can I still drink if I'm biologically under 21? I don't know what that looks like. So fantastic. And then the other one, which is, I'm not really happy with the result, but I'm happy with the direction. When I was 51, I took my DNA age. It had me at 59. I took it 3 years later, right? So at 54, it had me at 58. So 3 years later, I had regressed biologically by 1 year. I'm happy with the direction. Let's just keep that direction going. That's a good thing. Those are some of the indications of where inflammation is sitting in my body. And then my HSCRP is of course in normal range.
Well, yeah, I mean, having those before and afters with things would be good. I mean, I did no, I can't think of it, True Diagnostics test, and I've done it twice now. And my most recent one they changed their algorithm, so it's a little bit different. I was 7 years younger before. Now I'm only like 1 year younger, but I think the algorithm somewhat changed. But they also said, like, in the data, my heart and my cardiovascular system had aged the most, which freaks me out a little considering I'm running, I'm doing,
I'm
lots.
doing all the things.
Right. And so this is where a lot of people will be at with labs and different things. They're like, I'm doing all the things. Why am I still degrading? And so having a before and after, I always a proponent of, when you try something new, get a test where you can before and after on it. And it sounds like even the aging testing might be something, if someone's done that already, they can do a repeat after doing it. Or I've not seen I've heard of the Cedrate testings, but I've not seen that yet.
Yeah.
Gee, I'll get it. Yeah.
Well, I think typically you have to send off a full sample, right? So it can't be a blood blot test.
Yeah.
And then, the results are long. If you're kind of this health addict who's interested in your ongoing inflammatory test, it's a kind of cool kit. It's $300 and $10 a test. Like I've referred him. I was honestly at that conference, I was his best salesperson because I would kind of tell everybody about ESS-60. He was like, by the way, like, inflammation is something that we think we can have an impact on. Look at his test because it's amazing. So he gave me a free blood test, and we're still in contact. So it's kind of cool how things work out.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And the concept of inflammaging, I mean, it really is a thing. And right now, one of the most solid data research is aspirin at 81 milligrams. But at the end of the day, do you want to be taking aspirin every day? I don't know.
Well, the baby aspirin, as I recall, tastes really good. I remember when I was little and like, I have a headache. And then, as I mentioned, I had the thought process: how does this aspirin know to go to my head and not to my elbow? Because my elbow also now not hurts, right?
Right. It's interesting stuff. It's interesting stuff. And like, yeah, baby aspirin, do we want to be taking that every day? What does that impact to have on our gut long term? I know that everyone's saying it's okay, but yeah, I'm very curious as to what Vital C will do.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll get you a care package. If anybody's interested, I guess now is the time I'll give the link. If
Yes.
anybody's interested, we made a link for your audience, right? So it's MyVitalC, C as in carbon, myvitalc.com/health fix. There is a $15 off of your initial order coupon on that page. So go to myvitalc.com/health fix. A little bit of advice. People see that we have olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT oil. They're like, which one should I take? We always recommend the olive oil for two reasons. First, we are a science-based organization, and all of the research is on the ESS-60 molecule in olive oil. So that's kind of the first reason. Next is there's a higher concentration of the ESS-60 molecule in the olive oil. You get about 0.8 milligrams per milliliter in olive oil, 0.6 in avocado oil, and 0.3 in MCT oil. So significantly lower in MCT. Next is you can get a 25% discount by going on subscription. Even if you just want to try the product, please go ahead and take advantage of that discount. We won't hate you or anything for taking advantage of that discount. You can cancel at any time. Our customer service team has 1,000 five-star reviews on Google. That's how much we love our customer service team loves our customers. They are not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription. You can cancel it anytime, no problem. Most people just stay on the subscription though after they've had the product for a while. I also am pretty proud. I wrote a book. So this whole story that we've been talking today is on my book, is in my book, Live Longer and Better. And you can buy that on Amazon for $20. You can buy it on our website for that same $20 with a special charity piece. It's not on the landing page that we gave you, but go there, grab that coupon code, go to the menu structure, find the book. For $10 extra, I'll sign that book for you. The full $10 goes to Operation Underground Railroad. You may remember a movie called The Sound of Freedom. It's a great movie about a horrible subject, which is childhood sex trafficking, which clearly we need to get off of this planet. So 100% of the signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, such a big deal. And so many, I'm hoping we get more information out about it as time goes on and certain people are in, yeah.
Go to jail or just disappear permanently.
Yes, exactly. So in agreement with that. That's awesome. That's good to know. So folks can find you at myvitalc.com/health fix, to get the coupon code. Now, are you guys on Instagram too? I know we talked about the wife on Instagram or on
Yeah.
TikTok and all that, but now where can we find you if we want to see the day-to-day life kind of things? What are you guys?
Yeah, so you can find it on Instagram and on TikTok and on Facebook. We're at MyVitalC, so you'll find us, and that's kind of operates as my personal page and the company page. I'm constantly sharing great content, sleep tips, all that good stuff, and certainly would appreciate anybody going out there and following on Instagram at MyVitalC. And then I do happen to have a podcast. You'll kind of be exposed to that. The podcast is Live Beyond the Norms, and so I kind of reference the different episodes in the social media on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and Twitter, and YouTube.
All the things. Love it. Love it.
All the socials.
Love it. Chris, thank you so much for coming on, sharing info about Vital C and really letting me drill you on questions that I'm going to get. So I'm always thinking about like, what am I going to get asked? Okay, let me kind of drill that. And I know some of them are a little bit redundant, but it helps us to really understand how carbon can help us and just really, be able to revitalize us because after all, we are made of carbon. So why not use something that is already in us and can help us? So thanks so much.
I was working with one person who called this, and I loved it, the perfect carbon molecule. There is actually a book titled The Most Beautiful Molecule, which is entirely about this molecule. It's pretty, you think about the guys who discovered it, won the Nobel Prize for that discovery. It's pretty amazing.
I'd love to see, I'm sure it's online. I'd love to see the 3D on it of the image of the molecule, or even like see it under a microscope. I'm sure it's pretty neat to see.
Well, in a microscope, you have to use the most advanced, so a tunneling electron microscope, and you kind of see a slightly curved blob, right? Because again, we're down to 60, there's only 60 atoms in this thing. I think, what was I looking at? Insulin is like 1,000 atoms, right? So we're familiar with insulin, 1,000 atoms. This is just 60. So in that tunneling electron microscope, you've got kind of this gray field, and then there's these little circular balls on top of them. You're not seeing the shapes or anything. It's that small. It's amazing.
Yeah, it puts it in perspective.
And one thing for perspective, one drop of our product has 475 times more of the ESS-60 molecules than you have cells in your body. One drop, 465, something close to that, is as many molecules as you have cells in your body in just one drop. It's a tiny molecule.
Yeah, perspective for me, for sure. That makes it all kind of come together. And I think for a lot of people, like you had said before, to get it into cells, and all cells, but the red blood cells have mitochondria. I mean, that's gonna definitely flood the body with good stuff. So cool. Thanks again, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Dr. J, thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Hey, fellow health junkie, thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.